The diner was quiet in the way only small town places are. Plates clinked softly. A coffee machine hissed. Summoner laughed in the corner. At a booth near the window sat an elderly widow, small, fragile hands folded around a chipped mug she'd probably used 100 times before. Her coat was worn, her hair neatly brushed, her eyes gentle. She didn't look like trouble. She didn't look like she could hurt anyone. She stood up slowly, careful not to disturb anyone as she walked toward the counter. But her foot caught the edge of a chair. Just barely, her elbow brushed a nearby table. Coffee sloshed. That's when the man exploded. "Hey," the diner went still. The widow froze. Her eyes widened with panic. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to." The man stood up, towering over her, big shoulders, loud voice. The kind of presence that demands attention even when it doesn't deserve it. "You think sorry fixes everything?" he snapped. People turned in their seats. Simone whispered, "What's his problem?" The widow shrank back. "I'll pay for it," she said softly. "Please." That should have been the end of it. But the man laughed, a sharp, cruel laugh. "People like you always think you can get away with anything," he said. "Always in the way, always useless." The word useless hung in the air. The widow's hands trembled. "I lost my husband last year," she said quietly. "I'm just trying to." She never finished the sentence. The man raised his hand and slapped her. The sound cracked through the diner like a gunshot. Her coffee cup fell, shattered on the floor. She staggered back, barely catching herself on the counter. For a moment, no one breathed. Someone gasped. Someone else stood halfway up. A phone slipped from shaking fingers and started recording. The widow touched her cheek, red burning. She didn't scream, she didn't curse. She didn't fight back. She only whispered, barely audible. "My son told me. Kindness is stronger than anger." The man sneered. "Yeah?" he said. "Well, your son's not here." The diner doors creaked open behind him, and everything changed. For a moment, no one moved. The diner felt smaller somehow, like the walls had leaned in to watch what would happen next. Forks hovered midair. Coffee grew cold. Even the old ceiling fan seemed to slow, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The elderly widow stood frozen near the counter. One hand pressed gently against her cheek. Red fingerprints bloomed beneath her skin. She didn't cry. That, more than anything, unsettled the people watching. The bully rolled his shoulders, satisfied. He glanced around, daring someone, anyone, to say something. Nobody did. Fear has a way of sealing mouths shut. A young waitress behind the counter clenched her fists so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream, wanted to rush forward. But the man was big, loud, confident in the way people are when they've never been challenged. "Sit down," he snapped at the widow. "You're embarrassing yourself." The widow bent slowly to pick up the pieces of her shattered cup. Her hands shook, glass biting into her skin, a thin line of blood appearing on her finger. "Ma'am," the waitress whispered. "It's all right," the widow said gently. "It was my fault." The lie hurt more than the slap. The bully scoffed. "See, even she knows it." A man in a booth muttered, "You didn't have to hit her." The bully turned sharply. "You got something to say?" The man looked down at his plate, silence again. The widow straightened, dignity clinging to her like a shield made of paper. She reached into her purse, pulled out a few folded bills, and placed them on the counter. "For the coffee," she said. "And the mess." Her voice was steady, not weak, not broken, just tired. The bully leaned in close, invading her space. "You think money fixes disrespect?" She looked up at him then, not with anger, not with fear, with disappointment. "I raised my son better than this," she said softly. "That did it." The bully laughed loudly, cruelly. "Oh yeah? Where's this son of yours, huh? Off pretending to be someone important." The door at the back of the diner opened as a cook peeked out, eyes wide. He froze when he saw the tension, then slowly retreated. Outside, a low engine hum passed by. Inside, the widow closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if in silent prayer. "I didn't come here for trouble," she said. "I just wanted lunch." The bully grabbed the edge of the counter. then learn your place. A chair scraped loudly as someone finally stood, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. "That's enough," he said. The bully turned. "You want to make it your problem?" The man hesitated, then sat back down. The widow exhaled shakily. She looked smaller now, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. She turned toward an empty booth near the window and began to walk slowly, carefully, as if every step cost her something. Halfway there, her knee buckled. She stumbled. Before she could fall, strong hands caught her arms. "Not the bullies, someone else's," the diner murmured. The widow looked up. A man stood beside her, tall, calm, eyes sharp but controlled. He hadn't been there moments ago. Or maybe he had, unnoticed. He wore a dark jacket, plain jeans, nothing flashy. But there was something about him. Stillness. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. "Mom," he said quietly, her breath caught. "Stephen." The room seemed to tilt. The bully frowned. "What is this? Family reunion?" The man didn't look at him. Not yet. He helped his mother sit down gently in the booth, knelt slightly so they were eye level. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, forcing a small smile. "I'm fine. I didn't want to make a scene." He looked at her cheek, the red mark, the swelling. His jaw tightened still. He didn't raise his voice. He stood slowly and turned around. The bully laughed again, but this time, it sounded forced. "What, you gonna cry about it?" The man took one step forward, just heavy. A waitress whispered, "Oh no." Someone else said, "That's him." A phone camera zoomed in. The bully finally sensed it, the shift, the attention, the sudden unease crawling up his spine. "You slapped my mother," he said calmly. Every word landed like a weight. The bully scoffed, but his eyes flicked around the room now. "So what?" The man held his gaze, and for the first time that day the bully felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The diner felt like it was holding its breath. The man stood still, facing the bully, his posture relaxed, almost casual. But there was nothing casual about his eyes. They were steady, focused, and completely unafraid. "You slapped my mother," he repeated. No shouting, no threats, just truth. The bully swallowed, then laughed, too loudly, too fast. "So what?" he said. "You think you're gonna scare me? You don't know who I am." The man tilted his head slightly, studying him the way someone studies a problem already solved. "I don't need to," he said. "I know what you did." The bully puffed out his chest. "She got in my way. Old people need to learn. Stop." The word wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Every sound died instantly. The bully opened his mouth again, but no words came out. His confidence faltered. Just for a second, long enough for everyone to notice. Behind them, the widow watched from the booth, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Stephen," she said softly, "please, don't." He glanced back at her. His expression changed, softened. "I won't," he said. "I promise." Then he turned back to the bully. "You think strength is about dominance," he said. "You think power comes from fear." The bully scoffed. "And you think you're some kind of hero?" "No," the man replied. "I think you're a coward." A murmur rippled through the diner. The bully's face flushed red. "You better watch your mouth." "Or what?" the man asked calmly. The bully stepped forward, chest nearly touching him now. He was taller. He was heavier. He smelled of cheap cologne and rage. For a brief moment, it looked like violence was inevitable. Then the man did something unexpected. He stepped aside, gave the bully space, an invitation to walk away. "You still have a choice," he said quietly. "Sit down, apologize, leave." The bully hesitated. That hesitation told everyone everything. He glanced around the diner, at the phones recording, the faces watching, the waitress shaking behind the counter, the old man who had tried to speak earlier. And finally at the widow. She met his eyes, not with hatred, with sadness. The bully's jaw tightened. Then he sneered. "No one tells me what to do." He shoved the man in the chest, The room erupted. Chairs scraped back. "Someone shouted. The widow gasped, but the man didn't fall. He barely moved. He caught the bully's wrist mid-motion, fast, precise, controlled. No rage in his face, just resolve. "That," he said calmly, "was your last mistake." In one smooth motion, he twisted the bully's arm just enough to break balance. Not bones. The bully stumbled forward, crashing into a table, knocking plates and silverware to the floor. The sound was deafening. The bully screamed. Not in pain, but in panic. "Let go." The man released him immediately. The bully staggered back, wide-eyed now, breath ragged. "You could have walked away," the man said. "You chose not to." Before the bully could react, sirens wailed outside. Someone had finally made the call. Red and blue lights flashed through the diner windows, bathing the room in color. 2 officers rushed in, hands on their belts. "What's going on here?" one demanded. Everyone spoke at once. "He hit her. He slapped an old woman. He started it. It's all on video." The bully pointed wildly. "He attacked me. Arrest him." The officer looked at the shattered dishes, the terrified staff, the widow with the red mark on her cheek. Then he looked at the man, "Sir?" the officer asked. The man raised his hands slowly. "I didn't throw the first strike," he said, "and I didn't throw the last." The waitress stepped forward, voice shaking but firm. He slapped her, for no reason. Others nodded. Phones were held up, evidence everywhere. The bully's bravado collapsed. Wait, this is being blown out of proportion," he stammered. The officer turned to him. "Sir, put your hands behind your back." "What? You can't." The cuffs clicked shut. As the bully was led away, he twisted around, shouting, cursing, blaming everyone but himself. The diner watched in silence. The man walked back to the booth and knelt beside his mother again. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said. She touched his cheek gently. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You chose restraint." He smiled faintly. Outside, the doors closed behind the police. Inside, the diner slowly exhaled. The storm had passed, but the lesson lingered. The diner didn't return to normal right away. Even after the police cars disappeared down the road, their sirens fading into memory, the room remained quiet, not tense anymore, but thoughtful, like a place that had just witnessed something it wouldn't forget. Simonin finally turned off the phone camera. Another person sat back down. The ceiling fan resumed its slow, uneven spin. Stephen remained kneeling beside his mother's booth, his presence steady, grounding. He handed her a napkin for her cheek, careful, gentle, the way sons are when they're suddenly reminded their parents aren't invincible. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She touched the side of her face and shook her head. "I've felt worse," she said then. After a pause, "What hurts more is seeing anger grow so easily in people." Stephen nodded. "That's why it has to be stopped early." Across the diner, the waitress approached hesitantly, carrying a fresh mug of coffee and a small plate of pie. "On the house," she said, voice soft. "I'm so sorry that happened to you." The widow smiled warmly. "Thank you, dear, you didn't do anything wrong." The waitress swallowed hard, then looked at Stephen. "Thank you for stepping in." He didn't respond right away. He glanced around the diner, at the older man who had tried to speak up, at the people who hadn't, at the quiet guilt written on a few faces. "We all step in differently," Stephen said finally. "Some with action, some with witnesses, both matter." The older man cleared his throat. "I should have done more," he said. "I froze." Stephen met his eyes. "You didn't walk away," he replied. "That counts." The man nodded, relieved. The diner owner emerged from the back, apron still on, eyes tired. "I've been running this place for 20 years, he said. "I've seen loud arguments, but never something like that." He looked at the widow. "You're welcome here anytime." She reached across the table and took his hand briefly. "Kindness is what keeps places like this alive," she said. People slowly returned to their meals, but conversations had changed. Strangers spoke to strangers. Someone helped clean the broken dishes without being asked. The shared moment had connected them, not through fear, but through reflection. Stephen finally stood. "I'll walk you home," he said to his mother. She smiled up at him. "You always did that," she said. even when you were a boy. As they stepped outside, the afternoon sun felt warmer than before. The road hummed quietly, indifferent to what had just happened, but the people weren't. They walked slowly toward her small car. "You didn't have to come in so strong," she said gently. "I know," Stephen replied, "but I needed him to understand something." "And what was that?" she asked. "That respect isn't optional," he said, "and that consequences aren't cruel. They're necessary." She nodded. "You didn't humiliate him," she said. "You let the truth do that." They reached the car. Stephen opened the door for her. Before getting in, she paused and looked back at the diner. "I worry about the world sometimes," she admitted. "It feels louder, angrier." Stephen closed the door gently, then leaned against the car. "Anger makes noise," he said, "but decency lasts longer." She smiled at that. As he drove away, the diner remained behind, just another building on a quiet road. But inside it, something had shifted. A reminder had been left behind without speeches or slogans. That cruelty isn't strength. That silence can be broken. That restraint is its own kind of power. Later that evening, footage from the diner would spread online. Not the slap, not the shouting, but the moment when someone chose control over chaos. The comments would argue, debate, rage, but the people who were there, they already understood, because they saw it up close. When the noise fades, what remains is the lesson. The story didn't end when the diner doors closed. It never does. That night, long after the tables were wiped clean and the last cup of coffee poured down the sink, the people who had been there lay awake longer than usual. The moment replayed in their minds. Not the slap, not the shouting, but the stillness that followed, the choice that had been made in front of them all. Some would remember the bully's confidence collapsing. Others would remember the widow's quiet dignity. Most would remember the man who stepped forward, not to dominate, but to stop something that should never have happened. The waitress went home and hugged her grandmother tighter than she normally did. She replayed the way the elderly woman had apologized for something that wasn't her fault, and it unsettled her. The next morning, she would be kinder to every customer, not because of fear, but because she finally understood how fragile people can be. The older man who had tried to speak up sat at his kitchen table, staring at his hands. He had lived long enough to know regret, and that night he promised himself something simple. Next time, his voice wouldn't shake. Next time, he wouldn't sit back down. The diner owner placed a small sign near the counter the next day. Nothing flashy, just a few words written neatly in black ink. "Everyone deserves respect here." No explanation needed. As for the widow, she slept peacefully that night. Pain fades when it isn't fed. In the morning, she brewed tea and sat by the window, watching the world move the way it always had. Cars passed, birds argued over crumbs. Life continued, imperfect, noisy, but still full of small mercies. Her son called her before noon. "Just checking in," he said. "I know," she replied, smiling. "You always do." There was a pause. "You handled everything with grace," he said. "So did you," she answered. "But remember this, strength isn't proven in moments of power. It's proven in moments of restraint." He knew she was right. He always had. Across town, the bully sat alone in a holding cell, staring at a wall he couldn't intimidate. The bravado was gone now. All that remained was time, and the uncomfortable presence of his own actions for the first time in years. No one was impressed by him. No one was afraid. No one was listening. That silence was his consequence. Days later, a short video circulated online. It wasn't dramatic, no music, no slow motion. Just a clip of a man stepping between cruelty and someone who couldn't defend herself. The comments exploded. Some praised him. Some criticized him. Some argued endlessly. But the truth didn't need defending. Because the lesson wasn't about who he was, it was about what he chose. And what everyone else could choose too. Kindness isn't weakness. Calm isn't cowardice. Walking away isn't losing. Real strength is knowing when to stop and when to stand. Every day, in diners and streets and quiet corners of the world, moments like that wait to happen. Not with cameras, not with applause, just with choices. And someday, when no one's watching, you may be the one who decides what happens next. So remember this: treat strangers like they matter. Treat elders like they're precious. Treat anger like a test, not an excuse. Because one day, the moment will come. And what you do then is what remains. Time passed. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just the way it always does, steadily, almost unnoticed. The diner settled back into its routine. Morning regulars reclaimed their booths. Coffee was poured without ceremony. The bell over the door rang the same familiar note every time someone entered, but something subtle had changed, like a hairline crack in glass that alters the way light moves through it. People were gentler, not perfect, just gentler. A man held the door longer than necessary. A woman spoke up when someone raised their voice too fast. A teenager helped an elderly couple find a seat without being asked. No one mentioned the incident out loud anymore, but it lingered. Not as fear, but as memory. A reminder that lines exist even when people pretend they don't. The widow returned to the diner a week later. She walked in alone this time. The waitress spotted her immediately and hurried over. "You're back," she said, relieved. "Yes," the widow replied. "I missed the pie." They both smiled. She took her usual seat by the window. The same light fell across the table. Outside, the world went about its business, unaware of how close it always is to choosing better. Or worse. The older man was there too. He nodded at her respectfully. "Good to see you," he said. "And you," she replied. There was no need to speak about what had happened. Some things don't need rehearsal to remain understood. Elsewhere, life continued in parallel. The bully faced consequences that didn't announce themselves loudly: court dates, mandatory counseling, the slow, grinding process of being forced to sit with himself. There were no dramatic transformations, just discomfort reflection. The long road of accountability that begins when excuses run out. For the first time, he had to listen instead of intimidate. For the first time, no one stepped aside. That was the real punishment. Stephen returned to his own life. Airports, training rooms, long hours of discipline and solitude. He didn't give interviews about the incident. Didn't comment when someone recognized him and asked if it was true. "It's not important," he said. And he meant it. Because the moment wasn't about him. It never was. He visited his mother often, more often than before. They sat together in quiet rooms, shared meals, talked about ordinary things. The weather, old memories, small annoyances. The comfort of routine that only deep bonds allow. One evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the floor, she looked at him thoughtfully. "You know," she said, "people think moments like that change the world." He smiled faintly. "They don't. They change people," she said, "and that's harder." He considered that. She reached over and squeezed his hand. "I didn't raise you to protect me because I'm weak," she said. "I raised you to protect what's right." He nodded. Weeks later, the diner owner noticed something interesting. Arguments stopped escalating. When voices rose, someone intervened, not aggressively, just firmly. A reminder. A presence. It wasn't courage born of strength. It was courage born of example. The small sign by the counter stayed where it was. "Everyone deserves respect here." No one mocked it. No one questioned it. Because now, they knew what disrespect looked like, and how ugly it felt. The ripple moved outward in ways no one could measure. A woman who saw the video stood up to her boss for the first time. A young man stopped a joke that crossed a line. A stranger intervened before anger turned physical. Not because they wanted to be heroes, but because they remembered a moment when someone else had chosen calm over chaos. And that was enough. The widow sat by her window one afternoon, watching children play across the street. She smiled to herself. She hadn't changed the world, but she had lived in it with gray sand sometimes. That's the loudest statement of all. Long after the diner faded back into routine, the lesson remained. Not as a headline. Not as a viral clip, but as a quiet question that lingered in the minds of those who had seen it unfold. What kind of person am I when no one stops me? Because that was the truth beneath everything that happened that day. Not the slap, not the confrontation, not even the restraint. The truth was choice. Every single person in that diner had faced it. Some froze. Some watched. Some recorded. One acted. and none of them left unchanged. The world likes to pretend moments of right and wrong arrive with warning signs, that they announce themselves loudly with dramatic music and clear villains. But real life doesn't work that way. Real moments are small. They arrive disguised as inconvenience, as irritation, as ego bruised over nothing. They arrive when someone bumps your table, when someone speaks too softly, when someone is weaker than you. And in those moments you decide who you are. The bully thought strength was volume control. Fear, he thought the world belonged to the loudest voice in the room. He was wrong. Strength was the widow standing upright after humiliation. Strength was restraint instead of retaliation. Strength was choosing dignity when anger begged to be fed. The people who watched learned something uncomfortable. That silence can protect cruelty. That fear wears the mask of politeness. That looking away doesn't keep your hands clean. But they also learned something hopeful. That courage doesn't always rush forward. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it steadies itself. Sometimes it speaks only when necessary. And when it does, it changes the room. The widow never asked to be a symbol. She never wanted attention. She just lived the way she always had, with patience, humility, and quiet self-respect. And yet, her presence forced a reckoning, because it exposed a truth we don't like to admit. How we treat the vulnerable says everything about us. Not our titles, not our money, not our reputation, just our behavior. Stephen understood this better than most. Not because of fame, not because of strength, but because he had learned early that power means responsibility. The responsibility to stop harm, not escalate it. The responsibility to act, not dominate. The responsibility to leave people better than you found them. And perhaps the most important lesson of all, you don't need to win every fight to be victorious. You just need to refuse to become what you're standing against. Somewhere, the diner door still rings when customers enter. The sign still hangs quietly by the counter. Coffee is still poured into chipped mugs. And somewhere else, a person remembers what they saw. Maybe it's the next time someone raises their voice. Maybe it's the next time someone is mocked. Maybe it's the next time someone older, smaller, or quieter is treated as invisible. And in that moment, a decision will be made to stay silent, or to step forward, to excuse cruelty, or to end it. That is how change actually happens. Not in grand gestures, not in speeches, but in ordinary places, when ordinary people choose decency. So remember this story not for the confrontation, but for what came before it, and what followed after. Remember that respect costs nothing, that kindness isn't weakness, that restraint is power. And when your moment comes, when no one is watching, when no one is recording, when it would be easier to look away, ask yourself one thing: what will remain after I leave the room? Because that answer is who you truly are.